Welcome to this week's Culture Report, and this one is a special one. So as always, we're here to share our opinions and perspectives on the issues impacting our community, so let's get into it.
All right. Our guest today has fostered meaningful dialogue and been an influence that's truly shifted the culture. You may know her from her nationally syndicated talk show, Daily Blast Live, or her NAACP Image Award nominated podcast, The Comeback. I'm beyond excited to welcome Erica Cobb to the Culture Report.
Yay.
Thank you so much for being
This is so lit. I'm so glad to be here. I see you.
Before we get it, we're going to talk about the NAACP Awards. First, I have to gush a little bit because I love you so much. Just 2 years ago, I was just producing my little show in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I would see you on TV every single day. I would watch every single day, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I love that you just take up space. You're not scared to have hard conversations. And I was like, I can do that. That's attainable. And here I am. So thank you so much. You're a big part of that. I appreciate that so much.
I got my start in television in this very studio. So, yeah. So there's a lot of history here. Yes.
I was going to ask you, how did you get your start? You know, like you're like, you know, the superstar now.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
Thank you. I hadn't heard that. Thank you. No, well, I started in radio, actually. And I started in radio in Chicago, which is my hometown. And I was doing morning radio for 3 years. Our show was canceled, and I got picked up in Denver. So that's what initially brought me out here. And I had done like a few segments here and there in Chicago on television, but radio's been my first love. I've worked in radio since I was like literally 12, but really I got my start interning and stuff when I was 18. And so when I moved out here, I started coming into this studio as like kind of like a, you know, a partnership between the radio station and the television station. And I kind of interned here a bit after I lost my job in radio. So yeah, there's a lot of history in these hallways.
Yeah. You always got to start small, you know? Yeah.
How did the comeback start?
So in 2016, when I was in Denver, a lot of things happened. I lost my job, I got divorced, I became unemployed, I had to file for bankruptcy, and I was really at my like lowest setback season. And I made a decision. I was either going to dissipate into thin air, which is what I thought. I would just be walking down the street and I would disappear and no one would ever know that I was here. And then I just thought, you know, I started something pretty incredible for my first job to be mornings in Chicago. How did I do that? And I actually just went back to the building blocks that got me into radio. And I said, if I can find places that would allow me to come in and shadow an intern, I can learn this new skill set. So that was kind of like my thinking in the beginning. And then once I started getting in front of the camera and watching what was happening behind the scenes, I thought, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this thing work? So I started learning about branding and brands. This was in 2016, so not everyone had a brand.
Right.
And I started doing videos based on what I learned in television on YouTube. And that's when I did come back and I talked about my setback seasons. And I'm like, other people might want to talk about theirs. And so fast forward a year to 2017, I landed Daily Blast Live. I brought the comeback to Daily Blast Live, and I was like, this is my product. I own this. I'm going to start a podcast. So that's how I started the podcast.
I love that. That's awesome.
You know, a lot of times award shows, they overlook Black contributions. So specifically, what did it feel like and what did it mean to you to be nominated by the NAACP Awards?
Yeah, I mean, I will take any nomination, but I am not going to shut down like, hey, now I'm manifesting. I'm like, daytime Emmys, because you have to put it out there,
Absolutely.
Right? But I will say that being recognized by the NAACP really did mean so much to me because that is about the advancement of Black people and the idea that I would be a reflection or someone that they thought enough of my work and who I am to amplify and elevate me in that way was just, I mean, the biggest compliment.
Love that.
There's so much. What was it like just being in the? I saw you on the red carpet next to like Angela Bassett.
I know.
saw some of the.
I saw that. I was like, oh my God.
I got chills. I'm like,
what?
Oh my gosh.
Y'all
oh my
in the
gosh.
same room.
Let me tell you, I don't know what anybody believes in. I respect everybody's beliefs, but the Lord, my ancestors, the universe, everybody converged on that moment to get me on that red carpet right behind Angela Bassett. And I mean, the red carpet moment would have been amazing anyway.
Right.
But it just happened like there was a storm in LA, like the biggest storm in like the history of LA. There was a lot going on that we couldn't control. So when it happened, it was just like, it was a timing thing. Like otherwise, things could have gone totally differently. Right. So I got to the red carpet and they had my nameplate and they're about to say, because you know they hold it up and they say, Erica Cobb, come back with Erica Cobb podcast, and all the photographers turn and they take a photo and then you walk the red carpet. And they were about to lift up my name card and the guy looks at me and goes, I'm so sorry, can you just wait a second? And I'm thinking, oh man, they're not gonna, they got me, it's over for me, I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna go back. And he goes, oh no, we just need to get Angela Bassett through real quick. And I said, okay. and then I turned and she's like standing right here and I did the weirdest thing because I was so out of my element and I just went, hi. And just bowed to her because that's what we do, right?
Yep.
I mean, she is a queen. She is a queen.
Yeah, I love that.
There were a lot of big moments that night, namely Dwyane Wade and Gabrielle Union.
Yes.
Their speech was amazing. We actually have a clip of it. You can take a look.
Zaya, as your father, all I've wanted to do was get it right. I've sat back and watched how gracefully you've taken on the public scrutiny. And even though it's not easy, I watched you walk out of that house every morning as yourself. As your father, my job isn't to create a version of myself or direct your future. My role is to be a facilitator to your hopes, your wishes, and your dreams.
First, the intersection of Black rights and the rights of the LGBTQIA, trans and gender nonconforming people continues to be rough. It's a huge understatement. Even as we demand equality at the top of our lungs, we consistently fail to extend our advocacy to protect some of our most vulnerable among us. The movement makes room for everyone. Everyone. Thank you.
That was
Powerful moment.
Very powerful moment, just seeing parents take care of their child like that. And I've heard you speak about having your village behind you. So it's really important to have a village behind you as a child. Like, it's really important in those formative years.
Yeah, yes. I mean, the village is everything, and that can look very different for different people. You know, you have the village that you're born with, or you have the village that you create. Mm-hmm. But what we saw in that room, because there were, to be quite honest, I felt like there were mixed emotions in the room. I still haven't, pertaining to their speech, yes. I still haven't seen it on camera, like how it was produced. But I was really paying attention to the temperature in the room, because we are talking about institutionalized and also very antiquated ways of thinking when we're talking about LGBTQIA+, especially when we start to get into Black and brown communities. And that's something that is a secret, that's an open secret now, that we carry as this generation, because we understand that the generations before us did not feel that representation mattered in that way, and they also didn't feel that it was appropriate for people to be who they are. The idea of being closeted was more acceptable than living in your authentic truth. And for them to deliver those speeches in front of the NAACP audience was, in my opinion, important and quite pivotal.
Well, you're a huge part of why we're all sitting here and why this show was created. I know each of us have watched and the work that you do and been inspired. So I want to personally just thank you for making space to come on our show and talk to us.
It's a big deal for us.
Oh my gosh, this is like, are y'all kidding? I'm like,
No.
I can come back. Can I come back?
Please do. I really hope you do.
I appreciate y'all. This is amazing. I'm so excited for this. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, come through.
All right, it's award season, and this year we've seen a lot of firsts within the BIPOC community. Just this past Sunday at the SAG Awards, the Everything Everywhere All at Once cast continued to make history. Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan became the first Asian actors to win in their categories. But of course, there's no award show without a little controversy. So Mark Wahlberg presented the award to the cast, and people were quick to call out the award show for letting him present the award to a mostly Asian cast. This comes after he is arrested and charged with attempted murder for violent attacks on 2 Asian men back in 1988 when he was 16. Wahlberg ended up being convicted on 2 counts of assault and battery, spending 45 days in prison, shall I say. He also used racial slurs during the attack. So I guess my question for you guys is, that happened over a decade ago. Do you think he deserves all this backlash?
Yes.
Well, in this instance in particular, no. I mean,
It's not his fault.
Right.
I don't think he would have known that they were going to win in the context about his situation. I think the award show should have been a little bit diligent in knowing that, hey, this cast has a high probability of winning. With his history, it just doesn't look right. The optics don't look right.
If it was intentional, maybe they saw it as an olive branch, oh, look, I did all this bad stuff, but hey, I'm going to give you guys an award. See, everyone's happy.
No.
But no. I'm not into it.
I don't see that.
You don't think people change?
I do. I think they do, but I don't think in this context of him presenting an award to this cast and this movie, I don't think that was the right place. He's not even acknowledging it, so that's not the place to acknowledge it. I just don't think that was the right moment.
Yeah, for a moment there, I always am a believer that people do change, and maybe he has, but I think even in his sincere apology that he gave, or I'm calling it sincere, he omitted some details. So I think if you're going to come out and say, hey, I'm sorry for what happened, put everything out. I mean, let people, take it in and hear what you have to say about it, but don't omit details.
Yeah.
My thing is, what has he done for these communities since then? I haven't seen anything.
Right.
I've looked, I did my research, and I could not find a single thing he's done in these past 30 plus years, since that's happened.
Yeah, his way of paying reparations.
Yeah,
for,
he wanted the pardon in 2014. Why did he need that? He hasn't done anything for that community, in my opinion.
I agree.
I'm trying to get better about, forgiving people. It's really hard to forget, though. You always say, oh, forgive and forget, but that's really hard to do.
Especially when it's something so violent like that.
I know, and I do think people can change, because he was 16. This was 1988.
But you got to remember, there was also another attack two years before that as well.
I know, but he was...
That's with the black man.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know. Like I said, I'm not being a Mark Wahlberg apologist, but I do think people can change. But I mean...
But the olive branch isn't to give them
Oh,
an
no.
award.
No.
That doesn't even make sense.
He hasn't done enough. And I
Yeah.
feel like once you do something like that, if you're sorry and you feel bad for it and you really do apologize, you're going to have to continue to do it. You can't get mad just because people continue to bring it up. I'm like, well, you apologize for it once, but I just found out about this. I'm offended by it. I'm going to need you to apologize again. And that's something you just have to swallow. You're just going to have to keep on doing it. So, I mean, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. I don't care how old you were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I think the SAG Awards got some thinking to do, because I think that was the wrong move on their part. A new poll shows that Generation Z, or Gen Zers, are the driving force among adults who identify as LGBTQ+. Data collected by a Gallup survey showed that 7.2% of U.S. adults identified as LGBTQ+ in 2022. That's more than double the number in 2012. I spoke with a queer Gen Z entrepreneur on what he thinks is influencing Gen Zers to embrace queer identity. So let's take a look.
I think we grew up, at least during the first half of my life, or the early 2000s, thinking that straightness or heterosexuality was the default. But I think because Gen Z has been so interested in sexuality and queerness and questioning a lot of the structures that are in place, a lot of us didn't really grow up with people, adults that we knew that were queer. And if we did, or we would have, a lot of them unfortunately passed away during the AIDS crisis. For a lot of us, maybe the first interaction we had with that was Glee. And I remember watching Glee. It was the first time that I was oh, these characters, a lot of these characters aren't strictly one thing.
So the poll showed that Gen Zers are, like I said before, are a driving force of adults identifying as LGBTQ+, almost doubled in the last survey in 2012. And so I talked to Ian about what he's seen and him being a Gen Zer, what's influenced his coming out and his identity. And Gen Zers are a lot more open than the millennials and previous generations. And I think things like social media and representation amongst like what we see in films and movies and audios, just like representation across the board, has allowed that generation to see themselves reflected. But we also talked about like the missing element of having LGBTQ+ elders because of the age crisis. So I think a lot of those things played into like why this generation is so queer.
They are so, and they're just so open about it, so willing
Right.
to share.
Yeah.
Because not to say these people weren't queer like 30 years ago,
Right.
but just to be so open about it is what's the big thing. And like they're raised in an entirely different society. Things are so different than it was like 20, 30 years ago. So I feel, and I also feel like a lot of Gen Zers are leaning into chosen families. So even if their families don't approve, they have their friends, the majority of their friends I'm sure are accepting. It wasn't like that 30 years ago. Like you didn't even know if you can come out to your closest friend
Right.
because it was so stigmatized. So I think it's a beautiful thing.
I do too. I think that's another reason why representation matters, not just, for you to look up to somebody, whether it be, if you have a dream of becoming something, but also just to create those spaces, those safe spaces
Right.
to come out and talk about
Right.
it. So I do love that. for
Yeah.
sure.
Especially just seeing more queer characters in movies and just like seeing story. I know when like Love, Simon came out a few years ago, like that was like the first time I've seen, even though it was through like a white lens, it was still like a queer story. So it was really like, it had an impact on me. And like those kind of stories are influencing and driving this generation.
Yes, and they're celebrated because I remember the queer movies I used to watch when I was younger. I always hated them because they always like died at the end. They
Right.
always died at the end, whether it like be self-harm or AIDS or something tragic.
Or we were like the brunt of the joke, or like the character that was just like there for the joke. They were like
Right.
the joke. But now like we're seeing characters with these really deep personal stories, really humanized stories, instead of being like a joke or something like that. And I
Right.
think that is translating to the Gen Z community and that generation.
Absolutely, because Gen Z, they do not care. They do not care because they have a whole generation to back them up. So why would you?
Yeah.
Right now, schools across the country are taking part of a pilot program teaching AP African American Studies. The new course has faced political backlash with Governor Ron DeSantis banning the course in Florida, saying that it lacks educational value. The kids and teachers at Overland High School in Aurora have a different opinion.
I was, very excited because I've always been so passionate about Black history, African American history, all history relating back to my skin color. In any class I've taken so far, it's kind of been always talking about a specific thing. It's always talking about African American struggles and the suffrage of African Americans, but it's never talking about the accomplishments, the uprising, the kingdoms and queendoms of Africa.
Right now, some universities are facing backlash as well, but not for their course. Instead, for their diversity and inclusion hiring programs. Those programs are on hold on some campuses in Texas after critics claimed they were illegal. Governor Greg Abbott's chief of staff said in a letter that, quote, DEI has been manipulated to push policies that expressly favor some demographic groups to the detriment of others. Today, we're joined by Jason Thompson, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Western Governors University. So, one, thank you for being here. So, first, could you just, tell us a little bit about your position and what you do, and also why programs like those are so important to universities?
Yeah, so I oversee diversity, equity, inclusion at Western Governors University. And essentially, I was hired about 4 years ago to initiate a program. And I think often, and I'm going to kind of connect this to kind of the story because I think that's important. Oftentimes, because people don't understand the history of people of color, diversity programs are seen like an extra, benefit. When in fact, all we're doing is correcting historical wrongs. Right. We live in a country that has a history of discrimination and racism. The only way to undo that is to intentionally address it. Things don't happen by accident. So it's not additional benefits, it's a validation of the fact that women and people of color have been systematically removed from the educational system. How would we undo that? We would intentionally address these things. And when we see these disparities, we would address them. And so that's what I'm tasked with at WGU is how do we identify those disparities, but also for the average employee so they can come to work and go, okay, what's my connection to diversity? Can I see the connection between the things I say and do and how they might be received? And how can I do that in such a way that makes people feel welcomed and included?
Yeah, so we're not trying to give them, we're not trying to let them cheat or get a head start. We're trying to level the playing field.
Exactly.
Right. So a recent study shows that there's a declining rate of black men enrolling in college. So how does that play into this whole conversation?
Yeah, so this is what gets me excited is that we have to understand this systematically,
Right.
in the sense of what's the history. So my example is this. I'm literally the first generation from my family, I'm in my mid-50s, that was able to go to school that was integrated. My father went to a school that was segregated. Now we have to put that in context because years ago I had somebody come to my house and they did some work, African-American man, same age as my dad, and he said, when they integrated schools, I couldn't think of one job I could get with a degree. So I didn't go to college. He said I had no reason to, it didn't make sense. But we look at segregation as a moment rather than in the context to Jim Crow, because there was no incentive to go to college even when they opened the door, because there were no jobs for people of color. You couldn't get a job with a degree, so why would you go? And so we have to put these things in the context. And then the university system is systematically made for people who are middle class. Black people were systematically removed from the middle class. We weren't allowed to enter it. Why? Because you couldn't go to school. So when they changed the law and said, now you can go to school, what they didn't change is, do you have access to the jobs? So you can see that if we don't understand the full history, we would be, we are now surprised that, well, why are African Americans not doing well in the educational system? It's because there's a history and a system that's based on being a middle class that black people were removed from. So when you show up, things like financial aid are delivered in the context of middle class.
Yeah, I saw something interesting with affirmative action. It's like they're worried about making it something that they can get to, like be admitted, right? So you have certain groups or underrepresented groups that are admitted, but then you set them up to like not be successful in college because of some of the things that you're saying, right? So why do you think critics of DEI, why do you think they are so against it? Why do they feel threatened with it?
Yeah, and that's a good point. See, and I think this is the challenge is because we don't teach history in the context of understanding contemporary, what's going on. They see it only as one time, like, well, racism's been addressed, right? We integrated schools, we're done. Instead of seeing actually racism is a function of a systematic system that was set up in the US that excluded black people based on their color of skin. And we see the same thing for many different people of color, right? You're systematically removed. But the assumption is because of how we've always kind of taught history, it's that, oh, there was a moment, we addressed it, so now we're done. Instead of saying, no, actually there's a history and there's still a legacy. Just because you open the door to the school didn't mean the experience was good. And it doesn't mean that if I went to such an underfunded school, when you open the door, like, so my father went to a school that was segregated. He said the teachers would sometimes have graduated the year before from high school. So the teaching they got was subpar. Like, people don't understand that history. So even though he was then allowed to go to college, he didn't go to college, but if he did, he would struggle. Why? Because he was never prepared for college. These affirmative action programs are exactly our response to that history and understand the history. The problem is we don't teach the history, so many people feel threatened, like, oh, this is an extra benefit, rather than no, this is how we correct historical wrongs.
Each and every week, we want to end the conversation celebrating the good happening in and around our community. So here's the good news. We got another black Disney character, so somebody about to be mad. Disney just announced its newest live action film, Peter Pan and Wendy, featuring Yara Shahidi as Tinkerbell, who also becomes the first person of color to play the role. The film also features indigenous actors playing Tiger Lily. The movie will debut on Disney Plus April 28th.
And Puerto Rican icon Ivy Queen became the first woman to receive the Premio Lo Nuestro Musical Legacy Award after her historic contributions to reggaeton music. In her empowering speech, she said, "I know what it's like to get up without strength. I know what it's like to be told no, that a music is not for you because you have a pair of ovaries."
All right, so a Texas school shooting survivor is going to Hollywood after his audition on American Idol. 21-year-old Trey Lewis moved the judges to tears after his performance of Stone by Whiskey Myers. He said, what we go through every day because of what happened is terrible, but there is light, there's positivity, we just have to go chase it.
All right, and our girl, Kiki, keep a job, Palmer, just gave birth to a beautiful baby boy this week. The name? Leotis Andrell Jackson. She joked around on Instagram saying that he was born during Black History Month with a name to match, and she ain't never told a lie. So congratulations to them. All right, thanks for joining us for this episode of The Culture Report. We'll be back next Thursday to continue the conversation right here on 9 News Plus and 9news.com. Bye.